Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast with your host, me, Randy, and of course, my beautiful wife, Cathy, here.
Hey everyone, hope everyone's having a great start to their week.
Yeah, start to the month. It's
Oh,
February.
it's February.
Can
Oh,
you
it's the book. It's the book. It's the month of
of
love.
love? And I got two birthdays this month. I bet you don't
Oh,
have that in your life.
no, I have a birthday all year long, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, I'll take it for the month.
Yeah.
One, this coming Wednesday, the 5th, I will have 19 years of sobriety, but more importantly, of recovery,
Continuous.
continuous sobriety and
Yeah.
recovery.
And
And on the 24th,
Did you,
I'll be 29 years old.
you'll be 29 again.
Yeah.
But hey, no, I want to go back to the February 5th date. 19 years of continued recovery, which brings forth the topic for today.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, I didn't think about that, but
No,
it's
I
a
didn't
perfect
either.
week
Yeah.
to talk about this because
Absolutely.
what we're going to talk about today is in the recovery category. It's the one of the questions that was presented to us when we put it out there for, what's a question you have? And today we're going to jump right into that. But before
All
we
right.
do, I want to just go over a couple things that we have going on. We're still in the first quarter of 2025.
Yes,
We
we are.
have our 20% discount for our coaching
For a
services.
12-week coaching program.
12-week coaching program. And so what we offer is a 1 hour, no cost to you discovery session.
Correct.
We do that because we want to get to know you. We want you to get to know us. We want to make sure that we're a fit for each other, because when we're jumping into some things that we need to journey through and work on, we want to make sure we're in the right place. So if you are interested and you think that you might want some coaching, go to our website
Yes.
at healandrestorecounseling.com. Click on the link and let us know that you're looking for some help.
Some help, whether it's with your marriage, addiction, or trauma. We do both marriage and individual
Counseling,
right?
yeah. So what we'll do is
Or coaching.
we'll get back to you and set you up for your no cost discovery session.
Correct.
These can be done in person if you're local in Arizona to us, or they can be done through Zoom.
Yes.
We've had and we still have clients throughout the country, so it's great to have technology on our side.
And we'll even reach, as far as the world goes too.
Yeah, that is true. Nothing's going to stop us.
No.
So we have that going. So please check that out. And again, it's a 20% discount for our 12-week.
Right.
And you're investing in your life. You're investing in your marriage. You're investing in yourself and your relationship, your children, your family. Don't wait. We're going to have this special going through the first quarter, so that gets us all the way through the end of March. Yes, absolutely. And the other thing we have going is we have our most current book out, Renewing Bonds.
Renewing Bonds.
And you can purchase that through Amazon.com.
Yes.
Or if you would like a free PDF copy of that book, shoot us an email either through our website at healandrestorecounseling.com, or you can email us direct at healandrestorecounseling@gmail.com, and we'll send you a free PDF copy of the book. Some people like to have it in their hands. Other people like to look at it on a computer or on a screen.
And it is available both in paperback and the Kindle edition at Amazon. All my books are. And then Healing the Wounded Child Within is, I would need to say this, is number one. They're on Audible as well. But this is something we don't push enough. It's also that book, Healing the Wounded Child Within, it's been translated into Spanish as well.
Our Spanish community has that available.
Yes, absolutely.
So jumping back into this week's episode, though, it's a big recovery week for you. And a perfect opportunity to ask this question. So Lauren asked the question. What is the question that she's asking?
It's actually a very, very, very important question in recovery. It is the prime question that needs to be answered, and is what are deep roots of addiction? Man, that's a great question by Lauren. And we often look at alcohol or drugs as a problem, and we're going to get into this, but they're just a symptom.
Yeah, no, the deep roots of addictions, it's complex.
It's very
multifaceted. There's so many things. It involves a combination of, there's the biological, the psychological, the environmental, and our social factors that affect addiction.
You won't hear a lot about that from most not all, but most therapists, from most recovery centers, because they don't literally especially because you have the time to dive
Oh, yeah.
into this part of your healing journey.
So I'm just going to stop for a second here. We mentioned the availability for coaching for
Yes,
couples, marriages, individuals, trauma. It also, we have the ability to help through addiction too.
right.
So I'm just going to add that since
The
we're
inner
talking
healing
on
part
that.
of the inner healing part of addiction,
Absolutely.
which will result in long-term recovery. We have to remember that recovery is going to be a lifelong journey from this point forward.
Right. So we want to get into some of the deep-rooted issues and the factors that contribute to addiction. So we have several of them here. This might be a little intense at times, but this is meant to open our eyes, give us an awareness. A lot of people, I know for myself, I'm included, before you got into your recovery route and started your journey, I really knew nothing about it.
Right.
I grew up in a home where alcohol and drinking and partying was just the norm. And so for me, it became normal. And I know that there are people out there that that's very normal to them too. But it's no longer normal when it's affecting a lot of these things. And so we're going to get into some of the factors of that. And the first one we're going to talk about is biological factors. So what can you tell us about genetics per se?
I know there's been a lot going around about genetics and it's genetically passed down. But here, I was listening to a couple of different podcasts and I heard some really, really good information. If it's genetic, if it's a genetic problem, genetically attached to us, like a genetic heart issue, a genetic cancer issue, show us. In fact, the man that was presenting this, especially when it came to heart issues, you're just genetically predisposed to having heart issues. Then show me the gene. Tell me which gene exactly it is that is attached to me that says I'm genetically disposed to this. And you can go a lot into this. If you really want to know more about it, you want to listen to a guy named Gary Burka. He's a human biologist, and I'll leave it at that.
He's giving you a lot of insight.
A lot of insight about our human body, how it operates, and everything else.
Yeah.
But then I heard actually he was a Iraqi veteran, a SEAL, I believe he was a Navy SEAL. And he was talking one day, and man, he hit the nail on the head. Yeah, you know what? Addiction is genetic in one way. In that one way, Cathy, and I think you agree, and a lot of people agree, is a family curse of abuse and trauma.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the generational curses. And I'm going to go more into this a little bit later, but on top of page 64 in the big book, and I'm going to probably repeat
Big Book of AA.
Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where I found God, and God is all through that book, by the way.
Yep.
It says this: our liquor was but a symptom. That liquor could be drugs, it could be gambling, it could be overworking, it could be overeating, it could be sex,
pornography,
yeah, whatever it is, right? It's but a symptom of a much worse, it's but a symptom of a much worse underlying, deeper underlying issues. And we must get down to the causes and conditions.
Yeah, those are those roots.
Man, and I'm telling you, that says it all right there.
Right.
There is sobriety, right? And there is sobriety with really good, deep recovery of who we are.
Right.
Right. We're not who we are because of our addiction.
No.
Period in the conversation.
No. Yeah. So we've got a couple other biological factors too that fall under this. So brain chemistry is one of them.
Yes.
Addiction can be linked to changes in the brain's reward system. Woohoo! Particularly the release of dopamine.
Yeah.
The neurotransmitter is responsible for the pleasure and reinforcement. So substances, when we use like alcohol, drugs, or even compulsive behaviors, that's your gambling, they can hijack the system, and then they cause us having a cycle of craving or reward and dependency. It's like, you taste something and it tastes really good. You want more of it because now your brain chemistry is saying, oh, this is good.
And what happens is the addiction, the drug, whatever that drug is, it could just be do a lot of dangerous sports, that adrenaline, whatever it is, right? We have to remember that all we're trying to do is feel normal.
Right.
what is normal. So in order to feel normal, and again, it's going to go all back to the family curses of abuse, because a lot of us are never taught how to deal with this
Yeah,
stuff.
we're going to hear this
Okay?
quite a bit, I'm sure.
So we want to feel normal. So then what we do, because we can't find it, we just feel out of place. We're going to start getting high. We're going to start getting drunk. We're going to do all these other things, like Cathy said, dopamine and all those feel good transmitters are going to go crazy.
And they want more.
And they're going to want more, right? So then what do? Right? In the next part I'll talk about right now is the neural adaptation. Over time, the brain becomes used to the substance or behavior, leading to tolerance, requiring more of the substance to achieve the same effect, and withdrawal symptoms when not using it. This creates a physiological dependence that can reinforce addictive behaviors. So I learned this probably my first week when I was in Betty Ford 19 years ago, right? You're having these issues. Right. Now, first of all, we need to preface this, and I forgot to do it. Cathy and I are not psychiatrists. We don't prescribe meds. We never will prescribe meds. We've had a lot of experience with it. We come from our experience that we're going to talk about these things, and what we've learned with some of my mentors that are mental health providers in the field of psychiatry. Okay. So that being said, we walk in, we got all these issues, we're depressed, we're anxious, we can't figure out what's going on, we're getting high, we're getting drunk, whatever we're doing, we walk in and we see a psychiatrist. We sit down and tell them our problems. And they'll likely want to subscribe some kind of psychotropic med. Now, I believe in those. Once I got clean, they saved my life, and I'm weaning off my last one right now.
But you're grateful you had them.
But I'm
During the
very,
process.
very grateful I had them during the process.
Yeah.
So what happens is this: our brainwaves, our electrical system in our brain has been hijacked by the overabundance of outside stimuli, cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, the rush we get for doing dangerous sports, all those things. They're so jacked up, right? Like it says here, that it's just become a part of who we are. The psychiatrist that spoke to us at Betty Ford, they cannot give us a proper diagnosis when we're still using. We have to give our brain a chance to do away with most of that stuff. So then they can come in and they can start helping us in the way they need to.
And you experienced that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was a little dicey during that time.
It was dicey.
The hardest part of that process was getting yourself off
right.
the Klonopin that you were on.
It's Klonopin, the devil drug.
Yeah.
So
prescribed, but still a devil drug.
And here's what I'll say. Okay, do not, if you're taking meds of any kind, even if you're not, do not just say I'm going to quit, because there's proper ways to taper off these psychotropic medicines.
Yeah.
If you don't follow the protocol, I'm not saying you will, but there's a strong chance it can lead to a lot of big, major medical problems.
And for you were under the care as you were weaning off of it.
Psychiatrist, yes.
As you were weaning off of it when you went into Betty Ford.
Yes, absolutely. Matter of fact, it was one, and thank God I had with a psychiatrist that was attached or connected to Betty Ford, because they allowed me in there probably a little bit earlier while I was detoxing, because I was under the care of both the psychiatrist and my psychologist.
Yeah. Our next category, though, this one's so strong. This is it's your psychological factors. And you've mentioned a little bit about page 64 of the big book of AA.
Yes.
And it kind of falls under that. We, got to get to that root, got to get to that underlying cause and condition. And so we're going to talk about some areas of psychological factors, I think, that are, they seem like common sense, but people, I don't think, realize just how deep and how much is involved in these. And so the first one we want to talk about.
Well, what does it say on page 64 again? Liquor's but a symptom. We must get to the underlying causes and conditions. Right. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
It's basically what it says. So that's the real journey in recovery. This is where, like our friend Duke said, going to be the hardest thing Randy's ever done in his life. Second only to report leadership.
Right. So talking about some of those psychological factors, though, the first one we want to talk about is trauma and emotional pain.
Right.
Many people turn to substances or behaviors as a way to numb the emotional pain. They cope with their past traumas, or they escape difficult feelings. Wow, all of those sound very familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so childhood abuse, hello, neglect, or an adverse life effect. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be emotional neglect. It could be bullying. Maybe you were bullied as a child, and that's something that, in fact, I just talked to somebody recently about that.
Yeah, you did.
And then all those things can significantly increase the likelihood of developing addictive behaviors.
Right. So we have to remember that, for a long time, PTSD was only relatable to our war veterans. And that's so PTSD. When I was told I had PTSD, I looked at her like, "You're crazy. I'm not a war." She goes, "No, you don't have to be a war vet." All right. I think we talked about PTSD a little bit last week. All PTSD is when something happens, you relive that happening as though it was really happening in your life.
And creating that stress.
Right.
And creating that stress over and over again.
And trauma is what? You say it all the time, and it's true. All it is an unhealed wound, right? Cathy and I, and probably more so than you, Cathy's right there with me. I wish somehow that the people in this world, not only the United States, would listen and understand the damage that abuse of a child causes.
Right.
Not short term, but long term.
Right.
And over the years. Right. Into every relationship you have.
Well, I'm just going to use you as an example. Yeah. Your trauma started when you were 12 years old. 12 years old. Maybe a little bit before that, because your parents went through a divorce, and your dad was getting sick. There was a lot of things that started.
And mom was really abusive.
Yeah. Right. So it started long before that. And then I don't know at what age you were when you started drinking. I don't know.
That was my Aunt Jean's wedding.
Okay. 13,
14 years old.
And so, but you didn't get sober till you were 49.
Yeah.
So that tells you, and you drank because of your abuse.
When I drank.
Right. But my whole point in this is that, we talk about the fact how it affects you. It affected you from the time it started all the way until you finally got help at 49.
And at that
a lot of years.
At that young age, it's hard to put in the words. It's like this: only another survivor understands another survivor. So I know it's hard for the layperson to understand this, but when that happens, something happens to us within us that we can't explain.
No.
It's like we no longer feel right. It's like we feel dirty deep down inside. We don't know how to say the words. So everything that we do, right? Okay. We just don't feel right. We feel uncomfortable in our own skin.
My whole point in this, and knowing all of that, is that it took you all those years of drinking and drugging and trying to escape the feelings and trying to push your trauma away, your emotional pain, numbing it all. So yes, it affects you. It can affect a person for a very long time. And you did it at 49.
Right.
We still have people coming to us that are still
in their 60s,
that are still struggling with the trauma.
And for those that can get help when they're young, God bless them. And you know what? People out there listening, please don't discount when they come to you. They need you to help them.
Yeah.
And the only way you can help them is by believing them and helping them find the help they need.
And we've talked about this subject a lot. We're going to just get focused back on here. So recovery and mental health disorders. So conditions that are very common, depression, anxiety. We talked a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, bipolar disorder. All of these things can contribute to addiction. But many people use substances, or they engage in the addictive behaviors as a way to self-medicate and alleviate the symptoms of the mental health issues that they're having. And so they take advantage of of what's available to them because they're dealing with these mental health disorders as well.
And they're afraid to take the psychotropic meds because there has been horror stories in the past about them. So, it's easier for them to get like weed or something and drink, on the street. And
we've known many that smoking weed is their medicine for their mental health.
And you're not sober, you're still smoking weed. It's called marijuana maintenance. But we've had one client in our past that doesn't like to take psychotropic meds because when a family member passed away, they were given these meds, and this person didn't feel a thing and did not like that feeling at all. Didn't feel remorse, didn't feel sad, just literally didn't feel a thing. And unfortunately, that person was probably given a wrong diagnosis and probably given the wrong med.
Well, but then there's many years later having to deal with addiction themselves
exactly
as a result of it too.
100%.
So her mental health disorders based upon a very traumatic effect in her life affected herself much later in years as well, just much like your trauma did.
Now, again, Cathy and I are not psychiatrists. And I got to reiterate that because experiences, if you just jumping on, you didn't hear it from me before. It's our 20 years of experience working with people in this field.
So another category that falls under our psychological factors is low self-esteem and lack of coping skills. You know, there's many people with low self-esteem, low self-worth, or poor coping skills because they haven't been taught. They may be more vulnerable to addiction. They may use substance abuse or behaviors to feel better about themselves or temporarily escape feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, or emotional distress. And, you know, one addiction that comes to mind in that category is sex addiction.
Absolutely.
And I don't know enough about it, but what I do know is that many people that get caught in that sex addiction, they're dealing with inadequacy, low self-esteem, not feeling like they're part of, and that's their way of giving and receiving love, which is very unhealthy as well.
I'll just touch real quick on sexual abuse. For a man, sometimes they'll either completely withdraw,
that's good.
Right? Or they become extremely promiscuous to prove their manhood.
Right.
The same thing happens with women, right? Too, she'll either withdraw completely, right, or be very overly, protective, or she will go the other way and become very promiscuous. Okay, and it's a sad state of affairs, but it's not their fault.
No.
We haven't been taught, survivors generally haven't been taught how to deal with adverse situations.
Yeah. And so now we get into a whole other category that is very interesting to me as well, is the environmental and social factors. So we're going to talk about family dynamics. We're going to talk about peer pressure and social norms. We're going to talk about stress and life circumstances. Then we get the cultural and societal influences. So first one is our family dynamics. You know, growing up in a family where addiction is present and where there's lack of emotional support, neglect, or dysfunction, it can contribute to development of addiction. And children of addicts may model addictive behaviors at a very young age or use substances as they get older as a means of coping with the chaotic and neglectful environment.
Absolutely.
You know, if things are, if a child is living in chaos, all they want to do is have some normalcy. They want to feel something that they don't want to feel what they've been feeling. So they'll seek out drugs, alcohol to numb that pain, just like an adult would.
You know, I believe it was Dr. Gabor Mate, one of our favorites, said this one time. He said that addiction is always attached to trauma or abuse, right? And so this way, this growing up in a family, like Cathy said, environment's one way. I mean, everybody drinks. It's just part of the normal thing. Well, there's a lot of emotional abuse that will happen in that type of environment. Right.
Which will lead to the addiction.
You know, everybody else is doing it, right? You know, I guess it's cool, what have you.
So cool.
And for some people, I'm not saying all, I need to make that. Some people, it's like, they just walk away from it. Other people, they find out that alcohol and drug takes away all their inhibitions and they can just fall right into everybody else. They become chameleons at that point in time, I guess.
With everybody around them.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other one I mentioned was the peer pressure and social norms. You know, social environments, especially during adolescence, can influence addictive behaviors. I mean, I asked you, at what age did you have your first drink? And I was probably 13, 14, probably around that same time. You know, you go to a party, you're in high school, you go to a party, and I can remember driving through Jack in a Box and getting a large soda and then making an alcoholic drink out of it. I don't know what I was drinking at the time, but so peer pressure can lead to the use of substances and engage in risky behaviors. It can push us into addiction, especially if they're dealing with lack of confidence and they don't know how to say no, or they haven't developed strong coping mechanisms, which again starts in the home. So if you don't have that ability to have those strong coping mechanisms in your home, Peer pressure is going to get you. It can get you.
And again, I know we talk about parents, and we don't want anybody to hate parents, but we have to get to the root of these issues. So peer pressure is a big thing in school. So the question is, what's going on at home?
Right.
Okay.
This is where we as parents
we have to
really look at this.
So I'll preface too by saying that kids will experiment. Some kids are just, I try it, and they walk away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like for people like myself, and there's a lot of me out there, right? A lot of guys like and women like, is that we're seeking to feel normal. That's one thing. But
Yeah.
the other thing we're seeking in that is we want to feel accepted. We want to feel approved, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay,
part of.
I want to be part of. So if I do this, I'll be part of, right? Now, for people that don't, there's some people like say, well, walk away. They just say it's stupid. Maybe they have some examples of stupidity and whatever. But for myself, I grew up around a lot of drinkers. My mother, stepfather, even though they were Christians, were alcoholics. They drank a lot, right? When I started drinking, I did it for one reason, to be acceptance and to feel better. And it grabbed a hold of me like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we've got a couple more under this category too.
Yeah.
The stress and life influence circumstances. Sometimes we have chronic stress from work, stress in a relationship. Maybe we're having financial difficulties, or just living in an unsafe environment. That can increase the risk of addiction. The use of the substances or the compulsive behaviors may seem like a way to cope with the escape and to escape the stressors.
So again, how many of us, and we have to be honest with ourselves, were ever taught how to deal with adversity, how to deal with when we made a mistake, how to deal with these struggles, how to deal with them in a healthy way? I think a lot of us were taught how to deal with it with drugs, alcohol, and addiction. Just here, do this, you're going to be okay for the hour. But the problem with that is in the morning you wake up, it's still there, right? So again, it comes down to when we're not taught that life is full. I mean, Jesus promises two things: trials and tribulations. He never says this is going to be a nice, easy path. Right. It's going to be full of trials and tribulations. If we're not taught that, hey, even though we make a mistake, we're still not a bad person.
Right. No, we're not bad people.
We're not taught that. A lot of us are kicked by our caregivers when we're already down, and we don't need to be kicked. We need to be lifted up.
Absolutely. And then our last one under this category of environmental and social factors is the cultural and societal influences. Everything, all of these they grab hold of each other. But, in some cultures, substance use, drinking, it's normalized and even celebrated. And so that makes it easier for individuals to engage in the addictive behaviors without the stigma or awareness of the potential consequences. So societal pressures they relate to performance, to your body image, how successful you can be. That all of those things can contribute to the development of addiction. So, cultural and societal influences, who you're hanging out with, what is your environment looking like?
Environment does play a big part in it. Right.
And we've talked about that too. These are just
all of these.
Family dynamics, the peer pressure and social norms, stress and life circumstances, and then your cultural and societal influences.
Just real quick, carried over to me in my adulthood when I started running my own business. Who did I hang out with?
Other business owners.
Successful
business owners,
successful maybe in the business world, but man,
not in life.
They were a terrible influence on me.
So it's
I almost paid the ultimate price.
Yeah, but you were wanting to look good like we thought they looked good. Yeah.
Don't you know who I am?
Yep. So now we're going to get into some personality and behavioral factors.
Yeah.
Impulsivity. Gosh, I can't even say that word. And then risk taking. So some individuals are more prone to taking risk. Hello, this guy right here. He doesn't do anything easy.
Nope.
Or seeking novel experiences. These things can lead to experimenting with substance or behaviors over time. They can develop into an addiction. The trait is often linked, this is interesting, often linked to the brain's reward system, which we've talked about earlier, and the desire to experience pleasure and excitement. So you're sitting because you can relate to that.
Well, yeah, and then that attaboy you get for,
oh yeah,
look what boy can do. God dang, you're good.
So
Man, you're
there's
crazy, boy. Yeah, I know I am.
there's the acceptance. Oh,
Yep.
somebody likes me. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because I've been accepted.
Real quick, it's like in my first book, Healing and Child Within. There's a story about the girl that does the cartwheels, right?
Mhm.
And at first she's doing them because she's having fun and enjoying it, and loving it. It's just I'm free like a butterfly, right? And then people started to notice it. Hey, you little Janie, I'm just kind of paraphrasing the whole thing. Man, you're beautiful at doing those
Cartwheels.
cartwheels. And all of a sudden, nobody's around, so Janie quits doing them because she quit doing them for herself.
Started doing them
She
for
started
others.
doing them for other people,
Yeah,
and if other
that's so
people
good.
weren't there, she quit doing them for herself. She quit doing them because it made her feel good
Right.
about herself.
So personality and behavior factors hang out, and it's very easy to fall under. You could fall under an addiction when you are there for acceptance and approval. The other part of this is chronic stress or lack of control. A lot of times individuals feel like if they're lacking control over the circumstances or are chronically stressed, they may turn to addictive substances or behaviors to regain a sense of control and or to escape their reality. Addiction can offer temporary relief from feelings of helplessness. So a lot of times people will turn to, how many times do you feel, oh, I'm so stressed after work, I'm just going to have a drink, have a drink, have a drink. And before you know it, you're getting the relief from that drink. And therefore, every night you're going to have that, you're going to start craving that drink because the brain's going to tell you, this is the pleasure. This is where I'm going to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My mind left me again. But wait, it even there's this just coming to my mind. When I was working in construction, there was a gentleman that was a great concrete truck driver. The guy was bad to the bones, right? Anywhere you wanted to get him, he would get in there. And I can remember how excited he was to talk about retirement. I'm getting there. And he finally retired. And I saw him about a year later, and he said, a full-blown alcoholic. He lost his family, right? Because it doesn't matter when you start. Alcohol does not discriminate, or drugs, nothing discriminates against age.
At all.
Addiction does not discriminate against age, race, color. It doesn't do any of that. There's a story in the big book where same thing, gentleman, in order to, he was in his 30s, he saw in order to accelerate in his business and become up towards the top, he had to quit drinking. So he did. He retired in his mid 50s, right? Sat at home. Oh, I can have a drink now. I don't have to worry no more. I think it's in the big book. I want to say a week, a month, he was dead. Yeah. He drank himself to death. Because what happens with any kind of addiction, when you put down for a long time and you start up again, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from when you left off, right? As far as your drinking pattern, but your body cannot take it. You got to remember, you build tolerance up. Whatever your addiction was, you built years of tolerance up. Yeah. You can't.
That's why relapse is so dangerous.
Right. So.
Yeah. That's another whole nother story too. There's so much to this.
Yeah.
So jumping down, kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here, this is a big one too that we see quite a bit is chronic pain and physical dependency. Physical pain, which is our chronic physical pain, whether it's from an illness, an injury, maybe you've had a surgery, it can be a significant factor in addiction. We've heard this so many times, especially when it comes to painkillers. The initial use of the medication manages the pain, and then it leads to the physical dependency or the addiction because now we're coping with the pain.
Cathy was so worried.
We learned this early on.
So worried about me when I had my bad surgery in 2007, the amount of pain I was in.
Well, you were just a year into your sobriety.
I was a year into my sobriety.
All still very new.
You have to understand, I had two very strong mentors in my life, and then a plethora of other ones. And so I can remember this. I went to my mentor, sponsor. I call them mentors, right? That's what they are, really. And I said, look, my wife is paranoid about me taking these pain pills. And he says, okay, this is what we're going to discuss with her. Randy, you have to take your pain med. If you're in pain, number one, you have to take them as prescribed. Right. Don't skip. Because what happens if you're supposed to take them every 4 hours and you don't, right? and the pain comes up. Now what's happening is instead of controlling the pain,
Yeah.
by taking them as prescribed, you're chasing the pain.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the pain gets so severe because you missed the first or second pill. Now you're taking 2 or 3 to catch up to the pain, and the cycle goes on and on and on.
And that will lead to your dependency. The key word in that is as prescribed.
As prescribed,
Yeah,
right?
so good.
And have people in your life that you can talk to and will hold you accountable. Cathy still had control of my pain meds. She would say, okay, I agree with what everybody's saying, and she would leave me the amount I needed for the day.
While I was at work.
While she was at work, right? Now, was I going to take all of them in the morning? She wouldn't know the difference, but no, I took them as prescribed. So we have to be real careful, but have somebody in your life that you can be accountable for. We have to take the pain meds as prescribed.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, 2 things happen. Because of the pain, our body can't heal properly.
Yeah.
We need that pain to subside so our body can heal.
The body can rest and heal.
Right. And so that we're not chasing pain later down the road. And what happens with these opiates, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Can't get them prescribed, but now you can buy whatever you want on the street, right? And we don't know anymore what's laced with it, but that's why people will turn to heroin, because heroin's dirt cheap on the streets, right?
And then they're dependent.
It's a vicious cycle started by and I love our.
Never
Never
go there.
I'm not going to go there. All right.
So, and then the next little category we want to fall under is learned behavior and conditioning. A lot of times we're raised with conditional responses, and conditional responses come by what we see.
Yeah.
Or the environment we're in. So addiction can be a learned behavior where an individual begins to associate with certain activities, places, or people with substance use or addictive behaviors. So, for example, someone might begin using alcohol in social settings and then associate the environment with relaxation, pleasure, reinforcing the behavior. Oh, this sounds very familiar. Every Friday and Saturday night, we were in a conditioned response for a long time. But this one I know you want to talk about because we've had this experience come to us.
This is heartbreaking.
Through some conversations. And so share the conditioned response experience that we just had recently.
So you have parents getting high with you.
Or drinking with
you, getting high, drugs, drinking, whatever. I mean, I've heard them both, condoning it. Right. And the question I would have is this, especially more towards the drugs, alcohol is just as bad. Why are you doing this to your children? Okay, that's a big question. And what it is this. We as addicts, alcoholics, parents that are dealing with this, they've got a lot of their own unresolved issues. They want to drag their children into it with them.
The misery of it all.
And they're doing it, they're not consciously doing it. They're not even thinking about it. It's a subconscious thing that's happening, right? And then what happens, well, Dad's doing it, Uncle Bobby's doing it, Aunt Jane's doing it, Grandpa's doing it. I'm just throwing those out there. It must be okay to do.
And then you start doing it with your parents.
And then you start doing it with your parents, you start doing it with or adult caregivers, because they're seeking acceptance and approval. It comes down to that seeking acceptance and approval by the ones that are supposed to be showing them that stuff plus love.
And I look at this too as, then the adult doesn't have any consequences. So I guess I don't have any consequences either. So I guess it must be okay. So
in the way the world is today, that what you said right there, the adult doesn't have any consequences.
Yeah. So we're seeing this more often where a lot of people their addiction has started as a result of doing things with their parents and having their parents get high with them, drink with them. Even as a minor, even before they're legally an adult.
So this next one, habit formation. Over time, addiction can become a habitual behavior. We'll discuss that. Where the person continues using substances or engaging in behaviors out of routine or compulsion rather than a conscious choice. No, it's a choice every time they pick up. That is a choice that they make. That is a conscious choice that they are making. When it comes to cigarettes, okay, that can be to me, I'll say this. When I quit smoking 35 years ago, wherever it was, I suddenly realized not only was it the nicotine grabbing hold of me, but When I would leave for work in the morning, I grabbed my briefcase out of the office, right? And Cathy was still smoking. There'd be a pack of cigarettes sitting on the corner of the bar, right? The island in the kitchen. And as I walked by that island, out of habit, I would reach down, grab those cigarettes. I'm not smoking now. I'm quitting smoking. I was still early on. And by the time I got to the front door, I'd look, I go, what am I doing? I'm not smoking no more. It had become so habitual for me, the act of picking up that cigarette, that pack of cigarettes, going out the door, firing a cigarette up in my truck. That to me was habit forming.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, I think this point of it's a habit when it comes to addiction. I have to disagree.
Okay. And there's nothing
That's
wrong.
what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna
Because
disagree because it is a choice.
Because you had a choice to get sober and you made that choice.
Everybody has that choice. That's the
Right.
whole thing. It's the choice comes down to, am I going to continue this behavior and this
Right.
pattern, right? And a lot of the people I've talked to have had that quiet, still voice, just like I did, which I call God, speak to them, and they went against it, and they paid a terrible consequence, not a good consequence,
Right.
terrible consequences because they didn't listen.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. And then our last topic, which is big root for addiction, is having lack of support, not having, but lack of support and resources. So sometimes we have limited access to help.
Yeah.
However, if you don't ask, you're never going to find out. But individuals without the access to support networks, treatment programs, or recovery sources, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle to overcome the addiction. They're going to try to do it themselves. They're just going to continuously cycle back around. So lack of social support or inadequate professional care can make it more difficult to address those root causes of the addiction and sustain long-term recovery. And that's why it's so important that you have somebody you can journey with. There are sources, there are resources and support out there. You've just got to get to the right people.
And support is this too. This is really important. If you're talking to somebody or some people who, it could even be a pastor, whoever you're talking to, and they say, look, it's time for you just to forgive, forget, and move on, right? Or, for God's sake, that happened 30 years ago. Why are you still holding on to that? You're the reason why. Because I was never allowed to talk about it. Right. I was never allowed to have that freedom to say, this is
so what you're saying is that prolonged your ability to get the help.
Ability. And then those three words, forgive, forget, and move on, need to be removed from your vocabulary, because that just sends people right. What that saying is, you're worthless. So
I want to change the dynamic on that a little bit. Okay. Though. If you have somebody who is struggling, and let's say you are a leader, let's say you are a pastor, let's say you are a teacher, right? And you have somebody that's coming to you. If this is a topic that isn't familiar to you, that you can help somebody in, don't ignore them. Point them in the direction. Send them to us. Send them to Heal and Restore Counseling. Absolutely. If we can't help them, we're going to redirect them. Right. But the important part is if you have somebody in your life that is struggling in addiction and you wonder, why is it so hard? You don't have the answers to give to them. Get them to somebody who can walk with them, who can journey with them.
There's another saying in our big book, right, that Cathy and I live by. You cannot transmit something you do not have. Right. Okay? Do not be afraid. Check your ego, check your pride at the door. If you have not walked thoroughly through a recovery program to really help somebody change their life for the better and help them learn how to deal with adversity in their life. Yeah. Look at Cathy and I, we love the Bible, we love prayer. That's not the only way.
That's not enough. There's more to it than just that.
Romans 12:2 is the foundation for recovery. Do not be conformed to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you are still living 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you're still dancing with the devil, so to speak.
Yeah,
you can't. You've got to quit, and then the transforming of your mind can really take place.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say that, the lack of support. The resources are there, but I think it's the lack of support that that people think there aren't resources because you're not talking with the right people.
Exactly.
That's
And part of that comes from the rejection again of mom and dad, because if mom and dad aren't going to listen to me, why is anybody else going to listen to me?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we kind of close this out, this has been a pretty tough, intense one, and we kind of fingered off into other little categories, but they all tie back in to addiction and the recovery, and why is recovery so hard. So, as we're learning addiction, it's multifaceted. It's not just a one size fits all.
Not at all.
It has deep roots, and they're complex. They interact in our biological, physical, logical, and environmental and social factors. Healing from addiction requires addressing the root causes, like we talked about.
100%.
And we have to be able to understand our triggers. We have to have the dynamics that contribute to the individual substance abuse, or their behavior. We can help you through that, but you've got to get to a good addiction coach, a good addiction therapist. Not all therapists understand addiction. You want to make sure that you're reaching out. And if you don't know where to go and you're not, let us know. We can help you through that. Give us an opportunity to sit with you for a 1-hour discovery session. We want to make sure that we get you in the right direction.
This is the important thing that I want to say right now. Take it for what you want. A lot of therapists out there will not address any of your past. They just focus clearly on the now.
What's going on now?
That's great. And in a true recovery program, it starts focusing on your past. We have to go there, and so we can build you out and teach you to focus on the future. Right. Stay in the now. Stay in the moment. That's not a one day thing.
Yeah, no. Okay? It starts with now, but we got to go back to those roots. Right. So if you're struggling in addiction, if you've been in and out of addiction, reach out to us. We can certainly help you. I know Randy can, because that's his passion. Your call, would you say?
Oh, that's my calling in life. I mean, Genesis 50:20. Well, man meant for harm, God meant for good. He brought me to this place in my life to save the lives of many men, or many people.
Yep. And so that's what we
Genesis
do.
50:20.
One person at a time.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, good stuff.
Well, we hope this helps somebody and gives some understanding. Again, take what you want, leave the rest. But this is over the last 19, 20 years of our walk and working with people. This has been pretty much proven to us to be 100% true what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. It's worked for us.
Yeah. So is that it for this episode?
That's enough.
Yeah, that was a lot. I agree. I mean, but it's a little lengthy this time, but it needs to be talked about.
Yeah. That's good. Good question, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lauren. Okay. So remember this: if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does.
Cathy does.
More importantly, God does. Be blessed, everybody. Have a fabulous week.
Have a great week.